celebrate the development, while others are accusing the U.S.
At dawn, somewhere beyond the horizon, the world's most powerful navy is suddenly forced to confront an unthinkable question. What if dominance at sea is no longer guaranteed? In this video, we explore a hypothetical but chilling scenario involving a sudden naval confrontation between the United States and Venezuela. A clash that, if it ever occurred, could redraw the rules of modern warfare. Imagine a routine deployment. The American aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln moves through international waters, its flight deck alive with activity, its escort ships forming a protective ring that has been tested in countless exercises. Intelligence reports suggest rising tensions, but nothing out of the ordinary. Then, without warning, the situation changes in seconds. Radar operators detect an anomalous launch. At first, it looks like a false signal, until multiple systems confirm it. A missile, allegedly developed with next-generation technology and launched from Venezuelan-controlled territory, is now racing toward the carrier group. Official channels remain silent, but unofficial sources later claim the weapon was designed to challenge existing naval defenses, exploiting speed, trajectory, and surprise. What follows is a battle measured not in hours, but in moments. Defensive systems activate automatically. Commanders must decide whether this is a limited provocation, a test, or the opening move of something far larger. Fighter jets scramble, interceptors launch. Every decision carries enormous weight, because a single miscalculation could mean catastrophe. In this scenario, the missile does not simply represent a weapon, it represents a message. A message that smaller or sanctioned states may no longer rely solely on traditional deterrence, but on asymmetric capabilities designed to shock, disrupt, and send a political signal far beyond the battlefield. Analysts later speculate that the goal was never total destruction, but demonstration, to show that even a floating symbol of American power is not untouchable. As the confrontation unfolds, global markets react. Governments issue carefully worded statements. Social media erupts with unverified footage, dramatic headlines, and speculation that spreads faster than any confirmed information. Some reports claim damage, others deny everything. The fog of information becomes as thick as the fog of war itself. Then comes the most controversial part of the story, the response. According to leaked assessments, Washington considers a range of options, from limited strikes to covert operations, all while trying to prevent a regional incident from becoming a global crisis. Behind closed doors, diplomats race against time, aware that history is full of wars that began with incidents no one intended to escalate. This video is not about what did happen, but about what could happen. It is about how modern conflicts may begin not with declarations, but with sudden, shocking moments at sea. Stay with us as we break down this hypothetical battle step by step, examine why such scenarios capture public imagination, and ask the uncomfortable question. In an age of advanced weapons and instant media, how close is the line between fiction and reality? The roots of this hypothetical confrontation lie in a long period of steadily rising tension between the United States and Venezuela, a tension shaped by politics, economics, and military signaling rather than open warfare. For years, Washington has viewed Caracas as an unpredictable actor in the Western Hemisphere, citing its confrontational rhetoric, close ties with U.S. rivals, and repeated naval and air incidents in the Caribbean region. Sanctions, diplomatic isolation, and public accusations have gradually replaced dialogue, creating an atmosphere in which even routine military movements are interpreted as deliberate messages. From the American perspective, freedom of navigation operations and carrier deployments in nearby waters are standard practice, intended to reassure allies and demonstrate the continued reach of U.S. naval power. Aircraft carrier strike groups regularly pass through the Caribbean Sea and adjacent areas, conducting exercises, port visits, and patrols that are officially described as defensive and stabilizing. Yet for Venezuelan leadership, these deployments are often portrayed domestically as acts of intimidation. State media has repeatedly framed U.S. naval presence as preparation for regime change. a narrative that resonates with a population accustomed to external pressure and economic hardship. Over the past decade, Venezuela has invested heavily, at least on paper, in modernizing its armed forces, particularly in air defense and missile technology. While many experts argue that these capabilities are exaggerated for political effect, there is broad agreement that Caracas has sought to develop asymmetric tools designed to deter stronger adversaries. Public military parades have showcased new systems, some acquired through foreign partnerships, others claim to be locally adapted. Western analysts generally believe that only a portion of these systems are fully operational, but they acknowledge that even limited capabilities can have a significant psychological impact. In this scenario, the immediate lead-up to the clash begins with a series of incidents that, taken individually, seem manageable. A U.S. reconnaissance aircraft reportedly flies closer to Venezuelan airspace than usual. Venezuelan radar units go on high alert. Naval exercises announced by Caracas coincide with the arrival of an American carrier group led by the USS Abraham Lincoln, officially described as a routine deployment. Diplomatic channels remain open, but communication is strained, slow, and burdened by mutual suspicion. Each side assumes the other is testing limits. Behind the scenes, intelligence assessments grow more alarming. U.S. analysts note unusual patterns in Venezuelan missile unit movements and a temporary shutdown of civilian air traffic along parts of the coast, officially blamed on technical reasons. Venezuelan officials, meanwhile, claim to have intercepted signals suggesting preparations for covert operations against strategic infrastructure. None of these signals amount to proof, but together they create a climate in which worst-case assumptions begin to dominate decision-making. The fictional turning point comes when a previously announced Venezuelan military drill is abruptly extended without explanation. At the same time, American naval commanders receive reports of unidentified launches detected by regional sensors, later dismissed as test activity. In reality, such misinterpretations have occurred many times in modern military history, often diffused by rapid clarification. In this scenario, however, political pressure and media speculation prevent calm reassessment. Domestic audiences on both sides are primed to expect confrontation, and leaders are reluctant to appear weak. Thus, the stage is set not for a planned battle, but for a collision of perceptions. Neither side seeks full-scale war, yet both believe that backing down could invite further pressure. The looming presence of a U.S. aircraft carrier becomes more than a military asset. It turns into a symbol. For Washington, it represents deterrence and stability. For Caracas, it embodies encroachment and threat. When forces armed, alert, and mistrustful operate in close proximity, the margin for error narrows dramatically. In such an environment, a single launch, misread signal, or misjudged order is enough to transform tension into open confrontation. The beginning of the clash is marked not by explosions, but by uncertainty. In the early hours before sunrise, the USS Abraham Lincoln is operating in international waters as part of a standard carrier strike group formation. Flight operations are underway, radar systems are active, and escort vessels maintain their assigned positions. From the American perspective, nothing about the situation appears extraordinary. Carrier groups are designed to function under constant alert, and crews are trained to treat every day at sea as potentially volatile, especially in regions where political tensions are high. At roughly the same time, coastal surveillance units in Venezuela report an unusual convergence of U.S. naval assets closer than in previous weeks. Officially, the distance remains within international norms, but Venezuelan commanders interpret the movement as deliberate signaling. This interpretation is shaped by recent rhetoric, domestic pressure, and the belief that Washington is attempting to test Caracas's response thresholds. Orders are issued to raise readiness levels, and select missile and air defense units are instructed to move into pre-designated positions under the cover of routine exercises. The first critical moment comes with a radar anomaly detected by the carrier group's early warning systems. Initially, the contact appears inconsistent, resembling either a sensor glitch or a civilian launch far inland. Within seconds, however, multiple platforms begin tracking the same object. Its speed and trajectory do not match commercial activity. Automated systems flag the contact as potentially hostile, triggering a rapid escalation in alert status across the strike group. What makes this moment especially dangerous is that no official warning or declaration accompanies the launch, leaving commanders to interpret intent with incomplete information. From the Venezuelan side, the launch is later described in this hypothetical scenario as a controlled demonstration, allegedly intended to test detection capabilities rather than to strike a target. According to this narrative, the missile was programmed to follow a high-altitude trajectory and fall harmlessly into the sea. Whether this claim is genuine or post hoc justification remains unclear. What matters in the moment is perception. To U.S. commanders, the launch looks indistinguishable from the opening phase of an attack. Within moments, defensive protocols are activated. Escort ships shift formation, electronic countermeasures engage, and interceptor systems are brought online. Fighter aircraft already airborne are redirected, while others are prepared for immediate launch. The atmosphere on the carrier's command deck becomes intensely focused, with decisions being made under extreme time pressure. This phase of the confrontation unfolds in minutes, illustrating how modern naval engagements are compressed into narrow windows where hesitation and overreaction are equally dangerous. As the object continues on its course, analysts attempt to assess its capabilities. Some data suggests advanced maneuvering, while other readings indicate a more conventional design. In reality, many missile systems today combine proven technology with incremental improvements. But in the fog of a potential first strike, every unknown is magnified. The possibility that the launch is a decoy or part of a larger salvo cannot be dismissed, forcing commanders to prepare for worst-case scenarios. Meanwhile, communication channels between Washington and Caracas remain silent. Attempts to reach intermediaries are slowed by bureaucracy and mistrust. Media outlets begin reporting unconfirmed rumors of missile launches and naval clashes, amplifying public anxiety. This information noise feeds back into decision-making, as political leaders become aware that events are already being framed as a confrontation, regardless of the facts. The true beginning of the battle, therefore, is not a single act of aggression, but a chain reaction of assumptions. A launch intended as a signal is interpreted as an attack. Defensive measures appear offensive to the other side. Each response narrows the space for de-escalation. By the time the missile's trajectory becomes clearer, both sides are already committed to a posture of confrontation. What might have remained a controlled demonstration or a tense standoff crosses an invisible threshold, transforming tension into the opening phase of a naval battle driven less by intent than by momentum. As the confrontation moves beyond its opening moments, the clash evolves into a fluid and chaotic exchange shaped by technology, doctrine, and human judgment. What had begun as a single alarming event, discussed earlier, now forces both sides into sustained action. The carrier strike group centered on the USS Abraham Lincoln shifts from alert posture to active engagement mode, operating under the assumption that the situation may escalate further at any second. Escort vessels expand their perimeter, not to pursue confrontation, but to gain time and space, two of the most valuable commodities in modern naval warfare. On the American side, decision-making is driven by layered defense principles refined over decades. Surface ships coordinate radar coverage, airborne sensors feed real-time data to command centers, and electronic warfare units attempt to map the electromagnetic environment. None of this resembles the dramatic, clear-cut naval battles of the past. Instead, the battle unfolds as a series of overlapping actions: tracking, classification, jamming, interception, and constant reassessment. Every operator understands that the true danger lies not only in enemy weapons, but in misidentifying neutral or unintended signals as hostile. Venezuelan forces, operating closer to shore, rely on a different logic. Their actions are shaped by geography and by the awareness that they cannot match U.S. naval power symmetrically. Rather than seeking direct confrontation, they focus on disruption and ambiguity. Coastal units reportedly activate multiple radar systems simultaneously, some modern, others outdated, creating a cluttered picture that complicates targeting and analysis. Naval patrol craft move unpredictably along the coastline, while aircraft briefly approach contested airspace before turning away. Each move is calibrated to signal presence without committing to irreversible escalation. As minutes turn into hours, both sides test each other's thresholds. American aircraft conduct high-speed patrols along the edge of engagement zones, demonstrating readiness while avoiding direct provocation. Venezuelan commanders, under intense political pressure at home, authorize limited actions meant to project resolve. According to later speculative assessments, one such action involves the activation of a previously unpublicized command and control node, briefly detected by U.S. intelligence and interpreted as preparation for additional launches. Whether this interpretation is accurate remains debated, but in the moment, it reinforces the perception that the situation is deteriorating. The human factor becomes increasingly evident. Fatigue sets in quickly during high-alert operations, especially when crews are required to maintain peak concentration without clear resolution. On the American side, junior officers are tasked with relaying complex data upward, aware that any error could have strategic consequences. On the Venezuelan side, commanders must balance military logic with political expectations, knowing that retreat could be framed domestically as weakness. This tension shapes decisions as much as any technical consideration. Eventually, the confrontation reaches a critical phase in which both sides execute limited but tangible actions. Defensive interceptors are launched, not necessarily to destroy incoming threats, but to demonstrate capability and resolve. These intercepts, occurring far from the carrier itself, send a clear message while stopping short of causing casualties. From Caracas's perspective, the fact that such measures are taken validates their claim that U.S. forces are operating aggressively. From Washington's perspective, the same actions are framed as purely defensive and restrained. The immediate outcome of this exchange is deliberately ambiguous. No ship is sunk, no aircraft is lost, and no official declaration of hostilities is made. Yet the psychological impact is significant. Satellite imagery later shows altered deployment patterns, suggesting that both sides have adjusted their posture in response to the encounter. Naval traffic in the region decreases as commercial operators reroute vessels to avoid potential danger zones. Insurance rates spike, and energy markets react nervously, even though no infrastructure has been directly affected. Assessing the results of the clash proves difficult precisely because it lacks a clear ending. Militarily, analysts conclude that U.S. forces successfully protected the carrier group and maintained operational freedom. Venezuelan officials, meanwhile, claim that they forced a reassessment of American movements and proved their ability to challenge perceived encroachment. Each side presents the outcome as a form of success, tailored to domestic and international audiences. What matters most, however, is not who won, but what the confrontation reveals. It highlights how modern naval engagements are less about decisive battles and more about signaling, perception, and control of escalation. Advanced technology compresses decision-making timelines, leaving little room for error or reflection. Political narratives, amplified by media and public expectation, harden positions even when leaders privately seek de-escalation. In the days that follow, diplomatic channels slowly reactivate. Carefully worded statements emphasize restraint and stability, while avoiding acknowledgement of how close the situation came to spiraling out of control. Behind closed doors, military planners on both sides quietly revise assumptions, update contingency plans, and study the encounter for lessons learned. The clash does not trigger open war, but it leaves a residue of mistrust that lingers long after ships return to routine operations. In retrospect, the battle's true significance lies in its demonstration of how easily tension can transform into action without deliberate intent. The exchange shows that in an environment saturated with sensors, weapons, and instant information, even limited confrontations carry disproportionate risk. The absence of catastrophic loss is not evidence of safety, but of fragility. What unfolds here is less a victory or defeat than a warning, one that underscores how close modern powers can come to conflict, not because they seek it, but because the systems they rely on move faster than diplomacy can follow. In the aftermath of the confrontation discussed earlier, its broader significance becomes clearer, not through immediate outcomes, but through the shifts it triggers in strategy, perception, and behavior. Although no open war follows, the episode alters how both sides interpret risk and intent. For the United States, the encounter reinforces a long-standing concern that even limited regional actors can create moments of genuine danger through calculated ambiguity. The lesson is not that American naval power has been fundamentally weakened, but that its freedom of action now carries higher political and operational costs, especially in regions once considered strategically permissive. From the perspective of Venezuela, the clash becomes a powerful narrative tool. Domestically, officials frame the incident as proof that the country can resist pressure from a far stronger adversary. This interpretation, while selective, resonates with a population accustomed to external confrontation rhetoric. Internationally, the message is more subtle. Even without matching U.S. capabilities, a state can influence behavior by creating uncertainty and forcing attention. Analysts later argue that this perceived success may encourage similar tactics elsewhere, particularly among governments seeking leverage rather than outright confrontation. The strategic consequences extend beyond the two participants. Regional actors quietly reassess their own security assumptions. Some neighboring states increase cooperation with U.S. forces, viewing the incident as evidence of rising instability. Others adopt a more cautious stance, wary of becoming entangled in great power tensions playing out near their borders. The episode feeds into a broader global pattern in which localized incidents acquire outsized importance due to their symbolic and psychological effects. Militarily, the confrontation accelerates debates already underway. U.S. planners intensify discussions about missile defense saturation, sensor integration, and the vulnerability of high-value assets. Training scenarios are updated to reflect situations where intent is deliberately obscured rather than clearly hostile. At the same time, there is renewed emphasis on communication mechanisms designed to prevent miscalculation, even with adversarial states. Quiet diplomatic backchannels, long neglected, regain importance as tools for crisis management rather than reconciliation. For Venezuela, the long-term picture is more complex. While the incident boosts short-term prestige, it also invites closer scrutiny. Sanctions enforcement tightens, intelligence collection increases, and foreign partners become more cautious. The very ambiguity that created leverage during the confrontation now generates suspicion. Over time, maintaining a posture of constant readiness strains limited resources, raising questions about sustainability. Some analysts suggest that the leadership underestimated how quickly symbolic victories can turn into strategic burdens. Perhaps the most enduring consequence lies in how the incident shapes expectations about the future. It reinforces the idea that modern conflicts may not begin with formal declarations or massive offensives.